What's up, everybody? We're back for another episode of the Dragzine Podcast. I'm your host, Senior Associate Editor of Dragzine, Brian Wagner. And this week, I've got Jason Lee. Jason, what's going on?
Oh, not a whole lot. Just getting back at it and getting caught up from being gone actually with the business side of things, and then back off to PDRA in another week.
Yeah, you did the elusive thing that many of us can't do sometimes. You disappeared and did the whole vacation thing, which is when mom
Yeah,
ain't happy, nobody's happy, right?
that's exactly right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, my daughter was on her yearly vacation with her boyfriend, and he proposed to her, so we had to make sure the wife wouldn't let us not be there. So we had to surprise her and kind of be there and be part of it. So it was really cool and it worked out really well.
Well, that's awesome. Congratulations that everything went off without a hitch, and you just get to slide back into racing now, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I was just at the PDRA Norwalk event, and it was definitely cool to see them make a trip up there, and some of those racers get to experience Norwalk for the first time that have never been to that facility.
Oh, absolutely. It's one of the premier racetracks in the country. Luckily for me, it's about an hour from my home, so it's I guess I would consider it a hometown track for me. We don't get an opportunity to race there a lot, just with the different series not going there for whatever reason. I think that most of these series probably need to take note that that is absolutely one of the premier tracks in the country, not only for the racers, but for the fans, the pits. I mean, every aspect of it, just how they run their facility over there is awesome.
It spoils you going to that track, even for like, I was talking with a staff member there. They're saying they're averaging 500 cars a week for their bracket series, just
Yep.
for a weekly bracket series.
Oh, absolutely. And, and again, it just goes to show how well he runs his program. I mean, it's very disciplined, it's very structured. Everybody knows what to expect. They know what to expect out of him, and and they know what's expected out of them. So it's very, very clear. It's very organized, and I think most drag racers, at least the successful ones, are very organized, and that's what they like about it.
Racers, it's easy: payout, prep, program. You do those three things, and drag racers will literally follow you off a cliff.
That's exactly right.
It was crazy too. Evan Smith and I were talking. I saw him at the NMRA race pull out his phone and take a video. I'm like, what's he doing? I look over, and there was Bill Bader Jr. himself sweeping up a pile of rubber over by where they park the tractor. That right there
Oh,
tells you everything you need to know about that facility and how they do things.
Oh, absolutely. I'm going to have all the appropriate equipment. Oil downs are, to a minimum, and then when they do have them, they're cleaned up very quick. It's very similar to World Cup. Jason Miller. We always used to joke about it, but if they have, I don't want to point fingers, but if you had an import explode and oil down the track, we made jokes that they're like propelling down from helicopters and jumping out of trees. I mean, there's crew coming from everywhere to clean up. And as a racer being part of that, you kind of respect the fact that they want to keep that program moving for the fans. And that's a big deal.
Oh, that's no joke. Those two tracks do what they use, like for the import versus domestic World Cup in Norwalk. They use what I call the swarm technique. Anytime something happens on the track, there are people swarming from both ends to check out the problem. Like that, someone will go out and check it over if it needs, look, usually the starter or the track manager on this little moped. Then after that, it's like there's people on tractors, there's people on little stand-up blowers. They're, like you said, they're dropping in from the sky
Right.
everywhere to go down and fix it in a hurry.
Yep. Yep. No, there's no question. I know at Norwalk, I'm pretty sure it's a company policy for, everybody to drop what they're doing and go, just as it is at the World Cup. But, at Norwalk, I'm pretty sure the only person that has exemption to not cleaning anything up is whoever happens to be working the ice cream store. You can't drop the scooper under no circumstances.
No. And that is, yeah. And for those who don't know, Norwalk serves the best ice cream on earth. It's $1 a pound. And the second they open that place up, there's a line there. And I think
Yep.
they have to like rotate lefties and righties in at scoop, because by the time those dudes are done, or the women that are in there scooping too, they've got Popeye forearms. It's no joke.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No, it's like, the line is, similar to waiting for the Magnum at Cedar Point. It's, it'd be nice if they had a fast pass for that ice cream, deal, but of course that's a pretty good idea for him. So if he's listening, maybe he can do that. People pay extra for the fast pass for sure. But yeah, there's always a line, no question about it.
The best thing about covering the NHRA race at Norwalk when they have it is that they have the ice cream in the media center.
Oh yeah.
And they'll mix it for you too. It's like, I asked the chick, I'm like, wait a second, so I don't have to go over there and you'll like give me whatever I want? She's like, yeah. I'm like, oh, well, looks like I'm not
Oh yeah.
diabetes this weekend. Great.
That's exactly right.
And hands down, the other thing I love about Norwalk, best track food in the country for the price. You can't beat it with a stick. I mean,
Oh
they
yeah.
they,
No,
they get
absolutely.
after it.
Yeah. And again, I think that's one of the reasons why it makes it one of the premier tracks is he understands how important it is to have not only the best surface or track in the country, or one of them certainly, but it's everything else that comes with it. That's what keeps the fans coming back, So he'll have a tremendous amount of spectators in the stands in addition to all those bracket cars, because that family's able to come for an experience, which some tracks, even though they're great prep and they work really, really hard, sometimes they miss some of the simple things, and that's difficult for them to get fans, and they wonder why. But it's all about that experience, offering them, the food and the t-shirts, and you can buy merchandise there, obviously, and little dog, walking areas, and just very simple things that, really make a difference and want people, get people coming back.
Yeah, exactly. It's the details, the complete detail planning is what makes going to that place an experience. And
Absolutely.
you know, one of the things I wanted to kind of hit you up about, a lot of people might know, is how did you get into the drag racing? What attracted you to it? And then when did you decide to, make it a career? How did all this kind of start and come about for you?
Actually, it was kind of a weird deal, but in high school, I just enjoyed, speed and the adrenaline rush of, snowmobiles, jet skis, things of that nature that, basically you just get an adrenaline rush because of the speed. And myself personally, I was torn between doing circle track racing or drag racing. And there was a local guy in this area that was really good at the circle track racing. And, I went out to watch some dirt track racing, and he raced some ARCA, and was able to, to go to watch his dirt track program and just see what it all entailed, and like how much money does it cost, what's it like, how's the fans, what's the whole experience, just how can I get my best bang for the buck. And it didn't take me more than 5 or 10 minutes to know that that wasn't for me. When he was a premier racer, so people would team up and try to run him off the road, and he got tens of thousands of dollars of suspension part damage, brakes, calipers, A-arms, things of that nature. And I'm like, oh, I'd be in jail night one, like, somebody runs me off the road purposely, like I'm gonna go crazy, so I went to one race and made a determination that maybe I need to look into drag racing, because I did enjoy it. I had a couple street strip Mustangs back in the day. I've probably had 40 different Mustangs, and always enjoyed trying to make them go fast and, do what everybody does, the exhaust, the clutch kit, and, get rid of the thermactor air valves on your, and turn off all the emissions and just see how fast you can go, and, drive it up to Norwalk and drive it home, and that was a lot of fun. But it wasn't until I worked for BP as a district manager for several years. And during that time, I started racing as a hobby. Well, at local tracks, Milan and, Norwalk occasionally, and was doing really well with it, and decided to race like NMRA, the drag radio class back in the day, and started doing very good with that. And as I was doing all of that, people continued to come up to me and say, where can I get this product, or how do I do this, or how can I go fast, or, how can I do what you're doing, and I would always just point them in this direction or that direction and tell them how to do it. And just one day, the light bulb just kind of just went on. And, I was fortunate that as I started getting, good at winning the drag radio class through NMRA and NMCA, that, I accumulated a lot of sponsors through the way, and those sponsors allowed me to sell their product, which obviously helped them. If I had a part on my car and somebody wanted it, instead of me saying call so-and-so, I started to say call me, and I'll go ahead and sell you that product, and that's, PTP racing. It started out as, part-time performance, because that's what it was. Patrick and I met him through drag racing at NSCA, and he had a very good, blow through carbureted following, and I had a good fuel injection EFI following. So, at that time we became friends, and and he was a mortgage broker at the time, and he was making really good money doing that. I was making good money working for BP, and we just said, let's try to do this part-time. So that's, hence part-time performance. So it all started very, very smooth. And then, within just a couple of months, it was like, wow, this could be a full-time gig in a hurry, and so that's what it became for me. He's continued to be a mortgage broker and do part-time performance at first, and then I don't even think we were a year into it, and then he stopped being a mortgage broker and jumped into the PTP thing full-time, and that's kind of where we're at now. Ever since then, which I believe that was 2007, and literally every year we've gone up business-wise, volume-wise, sales dollars, tuning dollars, the whole 9 yards. So even through COVID, it was, that year was better than the prior year. So every single year we've continued to grow, selling parts and, tuning cars. So very, very grateful that we were able to kind of create what we have, and we try to keep it really, really simple, and try to offer the best customer service that we can. But it's nice having both of us, because like right now he's tuning, 2 customer cars in Virginia as I sit here and talk to you today.
It's interesting seeing how all that's evolved. I used to work for Ray Litz. We'd see you up at Milan racing all the time, and
Yep.
I don't think a lot of people understand that, like, both you and Patrick, and especially you, you piled up a lot of wins and did a lot of impressive things before you kind of stepped back a little bit to do the tuning side of things. How did that time as a racer help really sharpen your skills as a tuner?
I think one of the things that we can kind of offer, and other tuners can as well, but being behind the wheel, there's been several customers that, because I've been behind the wheel, I've won several championships. I understand what it takes to compete. Like if somebody calls me and says, I want to do this, this is my goal, I can tell them what that's going to entail, not, just feed them a bunch of bullshit and then they're unhappy because I fed them a bunch of bullshit. I can be very straight and honest with them and say, this is what it's going to take. Like, it becomes your life when you're competing for a championship. It doesn't matter that your kid's getting married, or you have an anniversary, or you missed your daughter's birthday party. Like, when you're running for a championship, they don't reschedule races for those events. So when you're running for a championship, unfortunately, it has to become your life for that year if you truly want to give it a go. Otherwise you're not a contender, because you can't miss those races. So, and from a driving perspective, I've got guys that may struggle with their lights, they may struggle with shifting, they may struggle with different games that are played staging, and I can kind of walk them through all these scenarios so they're prepared for them before they happen. Because in racing, you don't get any second chances. You have to be prepared, and being behind the wheel as a driver, it's something that's always, whether you're doing it or not, you're always a driver. Like it's, these last several years when I stepped away, I won several championships prior to just stopping cold turkey. And I had to, because our customers come first. When you're trying to build a business and you're trying to build clientele, if that business is getting so busy that your personal racing is affecting that business, then you have to step away. It was a very easy choice, but at the same time, during those times, I kind of live through my customers, like even though I'm not driving, I treat it as I am. I'm preparing them for every scenario. I'm letting them know what's going to happen before they even go up against the guy, because we've been paying attention to how that particular racer races, and they're prepared to go up against them. And, hopefully we can come out on top, because, the goal, obviously when I'm racing is to win a championship for myself and for my team and everybody involved. But when they're racing, it's to win a championship for them, their team, and then our company as well. So it's kind of a cool thing being on both sides, to be honest with you.
I think it's interesting the way you just worded that I've never thought of it before, that a lot of times, depending on the tuner and the services you're offering, you're almost like a traveling head coach for a team that has experience, that, you're either helping a team make that next step, or you're taking a veteran team that's made that step and then pushing them to that championship level, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you can have the fastest car on the property. That's about 30% of it. I mean, winning a round, let alone a race, 70% of it's mental, and you have to understand just the very simple concepts, and not get flustered that you're racing, a petty tune or a Tudrow, or I mean, some of the best guys in the country, whatever they do doesn't affect what you do. You can only affect what you do, and it's you and the tree, and that's it. It doesn't even matter who's in the other lane, because I can only go as fast as I can go, based on what that surface gives me. So my job as a tuner and a driver is to go up and analyze that track and say, what can this surface give me? And can I get as close to 100% maximization for this surface? And as long as I do that, 90% of the time I'm going to win. But if I let, whoever I'm racing get in my head, well, 90% of the time I'm going to lose.
And what drives that point home even more, I think, is that you're seeing a lot more parity across the board with horsepower levels. People being able to extract a certain amount of power out of these different, or they're running the same combinations, but it comes down to how well these racers have prepared and how well they execute their plan, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the races that we've won, I mean, I can, this year, in Eric's coast packing car, that thing, in order to get to where we are right now, it just simply comes down to testing, being prepared. I mean, we spent this pro mod was kind of new for this team. They've won small tire championships with us tuning the car, on the West Coast, the East Coast. And when we transferred over to the pro mod, we simply told them, like, this is going to be a learning experience for everybody. Like, we've done plenty of pro mods as tuners, but we haven't said, let's go out and try to compete at this level and beat the best in the world at it, and we spent the first year and a half, 2 years, basically trying every cubic inch combination, trying every component, anything we possibly could. But unfortunately for us at the time, we didn't have the ability to test every day or every week. We had to use the events for test sessions. So every time we showed up to an event, we had a different rear gear, a different tire, a different, transmission ratio package, different blower speed, different cubic inch, different compression. We had completely different elements where we were starting over at every single event, and then by the end of the event, you try to maximize it as best you can, see where that puts you, and good. Well, this year we've kind of taken all of the data that we accumulated over the first year and a half, 2 years, and basically went back through our data, analyzed the hell out of it. But Patrick and I, and R&E and Noonan, and basically Tim Lyons, and and Jimmy Rector, everybody that's involved in this program mechanically. And we analyze all that information that we gathered over the first couple of years, which was essentially our test sessions, and then said, this is what's going to work best, and let's just go try it. And that's where we are right now. I still think we have some work to do, but we're certainly a little closer than we have been, which has given us an opportunity to win some races. And fortunately, we've been able to put together some pretty good wins.
Now, I've got a question related to that we're going to hit up. But first, I've got to hit up one of our sponsors for this episode, MSD. From Pro Mod to Pro Street, MSD's Pro 600 capacitive discharge ignition system is a game changer for cars making big power. Capable of providing 8 individual coil outputs with a whopping 680 millijoules of energy, the Pro 600 is an excellent option for racers that previously could only use a magneto. Perfect for 4, 6, and 8-cylinder cars with high cylinder pressures, power adders, and nitromethane. The MSD Pro 600 CDI and recommended ignition coils, part number 8232, will take your engine program to the next level. Now, speaking of taking things to the next level, piggybacking off, we said, you've worked with Eric for a while. You've tuned him to a Pro Mod championship, and you've stepped behind the wheel of the Coast Packing car. And man, you've been on a hot streak. You've become a 1099 employee of DuckX Productions, the PDRA, and I think the Northeast Pro Mod Association too. What's that been like as, an entity and an organization, kind of wrapping up what you said about figuring things out and making it all to come together now?
Yeah, it's been awesome. I mean, first of all, Eric's, he's a great friend of mine, and giving me an opportunity to run this car and trust me behind the wheel is just awesome, because it's not a cheap, car by any stretch of the imagination. You don't go buy this at a local Hyundai dealer. It's something that a lot of people just simply can't afford. I know I can't. It's a car that is very, very expensive, and he doesn't really question. I mean, the thing that's pretty awesome is he gives me, like, I can run this car as it was my own. So, and that's what's very, very important from my perspective, is, you can have great customers, but great customers that have their own way of thinking and their own way of doing things is just simply a great customer that you just work with what he brings you. This particular customer, and we have many like this, but this particular customer trusts us to make every single decision when it comes to the car and what it needs to be competitive. So, when you say, I need this in order to increase my front split, or I need this to increase my back split, like, you can have a customer that can simply may not be able to afford what you need to do that, or you may have one that just doesn't agree with your thought process, or you have one that says, you know what, you've been doing this a long time, I trust you, go ahead and do it. And we certainly run everything past Eric, but he trusts that we're making the right decision, and you don't get a lot of confrontation when it comes to decisions that are made based on the car. It's ran, I mean, it's really no, like, it feels like I own the car right now. And that's big, because, as a driver, and as a tuner, you have to be able to, know that you're 100% prepared to compete against the best in the country. I don't like showing up 90% prepared, because then you need a whole lot of luck to win. I mean, you need luck as it is to win. I tell everybody, you need one lucky round of racing to win any race. I don't care where you're racing, and if you can get past that lucky round, the rest of it's all skill, but you do need the lucky round because you're competing against superior drivers, superior teams, and well-funded teams, but it's just been a great experience, for me. I mean, especially to be off so long from racing and then just, jump back in this thing, which is one of the fastest cars in the country right now, has been pretty awesome. I mean, it's definitely an experience I won't forget, and hopefully we can keep it rolling.
Yeah, what's it been like going, I mean, your infamous wheel standing Mustang was out there snapping necks and collecting checks for a while. And then you jump behind, a pro mod, which is a completely different animal across the board.
Yeah.
And, just I don't, people think, oh, it's a fast car, it's a fast car. No, there's a fast car, and then there's pro mod fast, because this thing's trying to kill you every second it's going down the track.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, the thing that's interesting about that is, and I guess it's just maybe drag racers or drivers or whatever it is, but for me, it like the car, I mean, it is on paper way faster than my red car, for example, but for whatever reason, it doesn't feel much faster. So, I think it's just like athletes that play basketball or something, or football. The very good athletes, the game slows down for them. They got this killer crossover dribble, but they've already done it in their mind 10 seconds before it happens, and they already know where the defense is. And great quarterbacks can anticipate where the receiver is going to be before they even, receivers halfway through their route, and they're throwing the ball where they know the receiver is going to be, because the game's going in slow motion to them, because they've done it so many times and they're so comfortable that their brain is so slowed down that it really doesn't feel fast. And that's the easiest way I can explain the white car right now, is especially on radios, but it just feels very slow to me, and that sounds weird, but it feels slow, which is a good sign, because that means, I'm just as comfortable as I was in my red car. Like, people are like, how the hell do you ride a wheelie through the 8th mile, with the tires 4 foot in the air? Well, if you feel like you're going 10 miles an hour, it's easy, and it's the same thing with Pro Mod. The only thing that I would say about this car that I've noticed on several minor occasions is you can't get too comfortable or too relaxed, because if you do, it can really hurt you, because you are going fast. Just because your mind's going slow doesn't mean you're not going fast. And you're going fast, and if something happens that, you're kind of laid back and you're lackadaisical because you're so comfortable, you can get in trouble to hurt, and these cars are a handful if you wait too long to correct the problem. So, especially on big tires.
Yeah, it's interesting you talk about things slowing down, because that's what you hear about from, honestly, a lot of the great drivers and people that have a lot of seat time in really fast cars that they talk about, is that as you get more used to it, everything slows down and it becomes more natural. You're not, like, for lack of better terms, freaking out, where you're like trying to wrestle with the car. It's just like you just, it's a natural flow.
That's exactly right. I mean, that's exactly it. Prepared for something, you're anticipating it happening before it even happens. So the rest of it's just easy, and I think that's the biggest difference between a good driver and a driver that's not, that's not going to win those races. No matter what you do, no matter how much money you have, if you're freaking out and your mind's going crazy, that's not a good racer, and it will never result in a win. Like, it just won't, because even when you tune somebody like that, you have to be able to anticipate, like, I need to know what somebody's light's going to be before they go up there, because I make tuning decisions based on what I need to run, based on who we're racing against. And if their lights are all over the place, I don't even know what the hell to put in it. You know what I mean? Because it's one of those deals where, if you're going to have a 122 light versus an 022 light, that's a different tune-up, to win that race, because I have a good idea what the next guy is going to run. You know what I mean? I know within reason, because all the data is there. You just have to analyze it before you go up to compete against them. And then I know, okay, this is what I got to put in it. So as a driver, it's very, very important to be consistent, calm, and smooth. So that feedback, your tuner, no matter who it is, whether it's me or any other tuner in the country, they need to know what that driver is going to do. And if they can get that out of the equation, that's just one less thing they have to think about when they're trying to make that car, get to the finish line first.
Is that another thing as a professional tuner that, that you play the role, you're playing the role of a coach? Is there times where you've got to calm your player, your driver down when they start getting a little wound too tight? If there's a problem, do you have to play into that and think about how you're going to approach situations?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when I first started working with Eric, I mean, because I'm driving his car, we'll use him as an example. And I don't think he'd mind me, mentioning this story, but I'm just like, how am I going to get this guy's lights better? I mean, he's consistent, but he's just consistently a little slow. And of course, my expectations of everybody are, through the roof. Like if you're not 020 or better every time, I'm freaking out, and trying to figure out how to make sure we can get you there. Um, but so what we ended up coming with, and it was just, again, understanding what makes people tick. Eric's the type of guy that basically analyzes every single aspect of everything. So he thinks everything through. And then there's an if then statement that follows it, like if the car does this, I do this. If it does this, like he's pre-programming every single move before he even goes up to stage the car. So he's prepared for it. That's just how his brain works. And at least that was my assumption of how his brain works. So what I kind of came up with was, you know what, I just got to get this guy not to think about so much, because what I tell everybody is, if you're thinking about one thing, you're 20 numbers slower on the tree. If you're thinking about two things, you're 40 numbers slow on the tree. If you're thinking about three, so on and so forth. If you think about five things, you got a 100 light, and it's just because your brain has to be focused on exactly what you're doing. And with him, we would sing in the headsets while he's staging the car. We're singing songs, he's on there singing, with him singing, it took his mind off of everything else he was thinking about. So then he could just go up there and react. And his trees started getting better and better and better. And then it got to the point where we didn't have to do that anymore, but because he was comfortable. So once he was comfortable, he didn't have to think as much either. So then he became, very good at what he was doing. And as a result, we won a lot of races and several championships, with his car and with that team. So that's just one example of understanding your driver. I've got several other ones that, are very calm, cool, collective. I got turbo drivers that are like, okay, who are we racing? Another turbo car? All right, great. I'm going to burn them down. I'm thinking, you're in a turbo car. Like, how are you going to burn down another turbo car? But they're just so comfortable that it doesn't faze them. They don't even know they're in a turbo car. And that's some of the best turbo racers, is they don't care that they're in a turbo car, because they can only affect themselves. And once you get past that barrier, that's half the equation.
I think that's a huge part of drag racing that a lot of people don't necessarily think about, is that you have to do you, boo. You don't worry about what the other lane's doing. They could have 30 people over there putting that car in the beams, doing a comedy show, whatever. We're going to do our routine. We're going to light a bulb, go race. And there's a lot of people, I think, that at all levels that fall out of their game and become not very calm. And that leads to them not winning.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, that's exactly it. It's the driver, the car, and the tree. I mean, that's it. And in some classes, whether it's factory showdown or whatever it may be, like those customers, it's just the tree and your shift. That's all that matters. There's nothing else that matters. It doesn't matter that you're racing a bar or a Chris Holbrook. Like, none of that matters. It's only you and the tree. And now then you got to hit your shift. So if you knew that you hit the tree, you better be done thinking about that, because here comes your shift. And if you miss any of those, in a car like that, you're losing the race because you're knocking the wind out of the car, or bouncing off a rev limiter and, hurting parts or doing whatever. So.
And I think it comes down to a lot of lessons you learn too, because we learned the whole burn down lesson as a turbo racer. We got burned down one time. We're like, you know what? In the future, we're going to plan for that. We're going to have the guys at RPM Transmission build us a gangster unit so we don't have to worry about it. Then going forward, when
Yeah,
someone tried to burn us down, we're like, whatever, we're going to do our deal. We could sit on this brake all day.
yeah,
This is on you.
absolutely, absolutely. And that's another thing that people don't understand is some of the inexperienced turbo racers, they already are freaking out about being burned down before they even, and they don't realize that the way the rules are designed and the way they're written, there's really no way you can get burned down as a driver as long as you do what you do and not worry about what somebody else is doing. Because you can, I mean, when I bought, or I built after my red car, I mean, I still own the red car, but I had a black coupe that came out for a very brief moment that was a small block twin turbo car, and it had a very tight converter. And I went up to race it at Milan, and first time out, I mean, and this is before creepers and, all this stuff. And, and it's Charlie Cooper will appreciate it. I had what was called a double bump scenario. You had to start bumping the dang car just to spool it before you even went into the top ball, So, you had to start spooling, damn near at the burnout box just to get this thing up on boost by the time you let go of the button. But not once did I get burned out. You know what I mean? Everything was under my own terms, did everything all within the 7 seconds. And as long as your components, like you said, in your case, an RPM transmission, mine at that time was an M&M transmission. And as long as those components can withstand that, and you got the appropriate coolers or whatever you need, if you're always prepared for the worst case scenario, the rest of it's easy. If they do you any favors, then you're good. If they don't, you're prepared. So it's, that's just, I call that turbo people problems, but most of them are self-inflicted.
Oh, it's beyond turbo people problems. I saw a guy with a blower car this, at the NMRA race that just for some reason decided to double bulb somebody. I think it was during True Street or something like that. Just immediately go on the brake.
Yeah,
like, dude, this is not a good strategy. This is not going to end well for you
no,
at all.
and that's the guy right there that his mind's going too fast. I mean, that's me as a tuner would step in and say, you have to slow down. You have to not worry about the guy in the other lane. You're going too quick here. Something's going to go way wrong, and it's going to be whether you're going to blow up on the trans brake or you're going to go red, or something's going to happen because your mind's going too fast. You have to slow everything down, and that, again, being a driver, I kind of know what's going through his head to create that problem.
That's also the guy that his transmission and converter builder are watching on the live feed, screaming at the TV.
Yeah, they didn't even get to see the pass because they passed out.
yeah, they're just hoping and praying they don't see a thermal event happen, and stuff like that. Ugh, just it makes my. Whenever I see someone on a brake for too long, like I immediately have bad flashbacks and start smelling burnt transmission fluid. It's the worst smell ever.
Oh yeah. Well, you helped Ray in a time where, same thing. It was that time where converters weren't totally optimized yet or figured out. They were all just way too tight because that's how a turbo car goes fast, and dump valve strategies and stuff weren't perfected. So spooling was a pain in the ass no matter what you did, and that was a very tough time to be successful with a turbo car. And the people who figured it out, and were in the cutting edge of all this dump valve technology, those are the guys that were very, very successful, because that was the huge difference, or, because it allowed them to run those tight converters, and spool the car, and then typically what most people did, and the mistakes that they made in the past, where they're like, screw that tight converter, I just got to put this loose one in. Well, then they had 25% slip at the stripe, wondering why they weren't running with the next guy, but it was raceable, so that's just the way they went, back then.
It kind of dovetails into, another question people might have is, what's the hardest thing about being a professional tuner? They see you guys on the live feeds and, at the track banging on the keyboards, and bouncing around. And it's not all lawn chairs and battery chargers, is it?
No. I mean, the biggest thing is, I guess one of the big unknowns or downfalls for any tuner, no matter how good they are, is did you communicate clearly enough with the team prior to the event that you're going to? Because, you know, if a team doesn't show up with a car prepared properly, doesn't have the right components in it, whether it's the stator, the converter, the rear gear, the tire, whatever it may be, then you just spend the whole event like trying to get the car mechanically sound, when an ideal situation for a tuner is that you stay in communication with that customer on a regular basis, and it shows up mechanically sound, if that makes sense. Because you can't, I always tell everybody, one of my favorite lines is, I just tune the junk you bring me, and if you bring me junk, you're probably going to get pretty junky results, because I can only do so much with that. But if you bring me the right combination and you come with the right mindset, there's a pretty good chance we're going to do really well, because we do know what we're doing, and we've done it for a long time. So we can analyze data very, very quickly, make changes, slight moves, and whether it's chassis adjustments or mechanical adjustments or just laptop adjustments, we can get you going in the right direction very, very quickly if you have the right components, and that's one of the hardest parts of tuning, is you're not attached, like I said, with this white car, I know how that car is showing up. I know what components are in it and what my game plan is going into it before I even arrive at the track. But then on the other end of the spectrum, we have customers that, you may tune them 5 times a year or 3 times a year, or maybe a couple times a year at Donald's races or something like that, where, the last time you tuned it, it was making some significant progress. But then the next time they show up, it's like, oh, I just changed these 12 things, and here we are. And I'm like, well, you might as well painted the car too, because you got a whole new car now. So now we're starting over, and maybe we'll get it figured out by the end. You know what I mean? So that's what makes the job very, very challenging, is just the communication that has to happen. And you're also trusting that those particular people or customers or whoever they may be actually understand and do what you're instructing them to do prior to their next, event. Because sometimes that communication, it's just like anything, you say something, but they hear it totally different. And then you figure out once they show up that something's not right, based on your conversation. So again, it's not in your garage or your shop. So, you don't have any control over that, so that's the tough part, being a competitive tuner. Like when I show up, I want to win. We used to have an expectation that as long as we can make that customer faster than they've ever been, that used to be kind of what we took pride in. No matter what happened at the race, as long as they could be faster than they've ever been in their life, and they go home with their fastest time slip ever, that was a great accomplishment. But now, I guess, as you do it more and more and more, and my competitive nature as a driver is kind of bled over into the tuner in me, I want to win every damn race with every customer now. You know what I mean? I don't care that it's their fastest pass ever. Like, it needs to be the fastest pass of everybody, and that's just, I don't know if it's because I'm getting older or more competitive, or that's just an expectation I've kind of always had, but maybe didn't have the same confidence that we do today. I don't know what that stems from, but I don't think there's anything wrong with it.
No, not at all.
You know,
It's funny, as you were describing the challenges of a tuner, what pops into my mind is that it's very similar to the challenges of a dyno operator when someone drags something to the dyno that has vacuum leaks, is leaking, and you're only going to get the results you want. I can't do my job as a calibrator when you bring me something that's on life support as it's running.
no, that's exactly right. Yeah, your expertise is operating that dyno and squeezing every last ounce of horsepower out of it, but they're leaving 30% of their horsepower off the table because they've got all these mechanical issues. So now you just turn into a Jew. You're basically, giving them a full service, before you even get to tune the car. It's pretty frustrating, and I can totally see. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons why we do what we do. We have dynos that we have access to, but we've over the years we've talked about it and talked about it. Like, should we open a shop? Should we have a dyno? Should we do this? Should we do that? And I like the direction that we've gone, which is, just getting our hands dirty at the racetrack to figure it out, because that is frustrating. I mean, and someday when we want to slow down a little bit and maybe not be gone so much, and be centrally located where we can, clock in from 9 to 5 and, dyno cars all day, that may be the direction that our company goes someday, but it's certainly not now. Because I, don't have the patience for that exact example.
That's why you need to have a deposit taken up front, and then you have the whole deal where it's like, this is what it's going to cost you if all I do is tickle the keyboard. If I got to start turning wrenches, then we're going to go to a whole different tax bracket, my friend.
Oh yeah. You jump up about 3 levels when you got to pick up wrenches, especially Barnyard. I mean, he's allergic to wrenches. I mean, I don't know if people know that or not, but there's been some stories where if he picked up a 9/16 wrench, his face started swelling up. Like, yeah.
The funny story behind that, I was involved in a thrash on a car that he was working on, or tuning, and he didn't pick up a wrench. It was pretty much everybody's like, just we'll show you what's broken. Just stand over there. We'll take care of this, please.
Yep, that's right. Yep, absolutely. I mean, and I mean, don't get me wrong. He absolutely is capable and can wrench, and he, as of recently, he's been underneath some cars, making some 4-link adjustments and stuff like that. And he's actually started to wire some cars, which is, and I just said his name and he's calling my phone. Yeah, so he's certainly capable, but it's just a joke that we have as tuners, like, where, we need to, we can't get our hands dirty because, the keyboard may not work, and you don't want me to slip up on a keyboard because I got oil on my fingers. It's just a joke, but we certainly, both of us, I mean, back in the day, that red car, I won a lot of races with it, but it wasn't by, just sitting down in a lounge chair. It was, I mean, head gaskets and wrenching and, hitting walls and getting the car back running for the next morning, and just, endless amounts of wrenching. So, and he was there, with me during those times, but it's, we make jokes about it that, we're retired now from that aspect of it.
I can vouch for that, because I have seen you put multiple head units on a car at the World Cup. Multiple head units, but we can get into more of that here. I've got a question that's kind of about that should be fun for you to answer. But before we kick things into high gear here, I got to hit our last sponsor, Procharger. For 25 years, Procharger has been the industry's leading aftermarket supercharger manufacturer by designing, engineering, and building the most powerful, reliable, and advanced centrifugal superchargers on the market. No matter if you're looking for 3,500 horsepower record-setting Pro Mod power, or a DIY system for your street car, truck, or even motorcycle, Procharger has a perfect supercharger system for you. For more information on all the amazing ways you can bolt on 40, 50, 60, or even 100% more horsepower to your ride, visit Procharger.com. So we hit our last sponsor integration here, and it's funny to see you and Patrick. I think you tune everything but golf carts, literally, at the track, and you might tune those at some point that we don't see. But what do you enjoy the most about tuning all these different combinations at the track? You get to play with everything. What do you like about that?
I think just taking it from I guess, kind of a virgin product to the end result. You put together a combination on paper for a customer because they're looking for your advice, and just seeing, can you achieve the goal that you set with the customer? I mean, that becomes the challenge. And what I like about and enjoy about drag racing is it's all a challenge. If it wasn't a challenge, I don't think I would do it. I mean, it's And that's one of the things I like about big tire racing. I mean, I don't want to go off on a tangent, but I mean, like to me, radio racing is so easy compared to big tire racing. Keeping that big tire around and keeping it fast and efficient, is such a freaking challenge, and the people that understand that sometimes taking power out makes you go faster on a big tire and, things of that nature that it just works completely opposite of radio racing, makes it, challenging and rewarding, and that's kind of what, and when you put a 3310.5W on a car, a 2810.5 on a customer car, or a 275 drag radial. I mean, just they're all completely different and want completely different stuff, chassis settings, shock settings, all of that, and understanding all of that, is what makes it very appealing. It's everything's kind of its own puzzle that you're trying to put together, and when it's finished, you want to take a picture and hang it on your wall. I mean, that's just kind of what makes it rewarding, is I guess all the pieces that have to be in place to get to that final result.
I think that's the one thing that a common thread every drag racer has, no matter what you do, is we all like to play with the puzzle box of cars and drag racing. You just want
Yep.
to figure it out. That's how your mind works.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that we as a company have done a little bit differently than anybody else out there is there's we I mean, I can't think of any situation where we have two customer cars that are alike. So if we're tuning, Tyler Hard's, car, yeah, Tyler's car, Kevin McCurdy's car, or Eric's car, those are Procharge cars, but they have different cubic inches, different compression, different transmissions, different rear gears. I mean, they're ran completely different from each other, and there's a million different ways to get to the same result. And it keeps it, first of all, you're learning a lot, and it just the goal is to get them all to run very, very similar, with a completely different recipe, and that's what makes it very, very cool. And it's the same thing with whether it's factory showdown, whether it's LDR or Pro 275. Like we just when I think about our customer base, everybody has something completely different, and it keeps it fresh for us, which is it's in a lot of cases a little more challenging sometimes, to not have that cookie cutter recipe, so to speak. But I think you're allowing the customer to kind of run with their ideas and what they want, and it's our job to help them maximize it and make that that idea or that dream, come to fruition. And if we do that, great. If we don't, as tuners, we have to be able to go back to that customer and say, listen, I know you wanted to do this, but that may not be the best way. We've already, we believe that we're 98% maximized now, and it may not be good enough. I think we need to change this, this, and this to get you, closer to where you want to be. And it wasn't for a lack of trying. It's just the idea didn't work out. And that happens a lot of times in drag racing. I mean, we've had in Eric's car specifically over that 2-year window of R&D and information gathering, we tried several things that we went backwards on that felt like they were very, very good calls that just didn't happen to work out, and you have to be like man enough to say, like, we got to hit the reset button here. That didn't work, and just can that idea and move forward, and not be stubborn and be stuck on it so long that you just become very underperforming and not do well, and that's, you have to take that same mentality with all of these teams. They all come with an idea, and in conjunction with our ideas, you come up with the recipe. Well, at the end of the day, if it doesn't work, you have to be able to work together, and you have to have that customer that understands that and trusts you to make the component change to get you in the right direction, and that's just kind of, how we do it.
Now we're getting to shift into another gear once again. It's kind of where I start asking the fun questions of my guests. And
Yep.
you alluded to it earlier. The crazy things you've had to do at the track. Swapping stuff out, banging into walls. And when you've been around racing as long as you have and kind of done the things you have, there's a certain legend that starts to build around you. So one of the stories I've always heard that will let you debunk this, whether this is true or not, was that you had a unfortunate encounter with a barrier at one point, and to continue your race weekend, you actually used a trailer winch to straighten a core support. Is this true or false?
No, that's true. We actually had to use the winch to pull the front of the car out so I could even get the doors open and closed. So that was actually in Atlanta, I believe, and I had a rear end upper control arm mount off the rear end, break off the rear end housing, and it shifted the rear end. And when it shifted the rear end, it cut a rear tire at 190 miles an hour and hit the wall head on, and the motor plate was bent, the mid plate was bent, the doors wouldn't open. It destroyed the blower, the gear drive, the transmission was cocked sideways in the car. It went through the tunnel, ripped the rear end right out of the car. And that was in qualifying, so I think it might have been the first round of qualifying. I mean, this has been several years ago, so the memory is a little vague, but I remember Dave W. from Procharger was there. Tim Lyons was huge, instrumental in helping me do this. I mean, we literally stayed up all night, had the car up on jacks on the lift inside the trailer, had it strapped down, had a winch pulling on the front, sledgehammer in the sides, trying to stiffen them up when you're pulling on the car, and basically using the 4-post lift as a frame machine to try to get the car back straight, and duct tape the hood, the front, the front bumper cover, needed front rims, needed rear rims, needed the whole underneath rear structure of the car re-welded back in, needed the A-arm, mounts, upper control arm mounts welded back on the rear end housing. That was out of the car. And basically, the car literally felt like we built it again from the ground up. And I remember Patrick, he said, well, what are you gonna do? You gonna make a full pass? And I said, I guess we're just gonna see how it feels. I already hit the wall at 190. It can't get much worse. And so we unloaded that thing the next day, because it was literally put in the trailer with a loader. Like they literally, had forks and just pushed the thing in the trailer, and we pulled it in with the winch, sparks flying, all tires are flat, just the car, by everybody's estimation, was damn near total. And in fact, after that race, we ended up front half in the car and redoing it. Greg Chandler, he donated a front clip to the Mustang, and switched that out for me, and it was just awesome. Had just customers and friends stepping in to help out with the situation, but it was a pretty bad wreck, and moral of the story is I think the very next hit, we made a full pass, and I think we qualified number 1 or 2, and I believe we either run it up or won that race with a complete zip tied, duct taped together race car. So it was pretty awesome, and I couldn't have done it by myself for sure. But I don't even remember who was all there helping me, but there was probably 4 or 5 of us that stayed up all night just to get it back on the road.
It's interesting hearing the full story now, and it's actually even more terrifying yet humorous. I just picture like you guys in the trailer, and how do you come up with the idea to fix it? Well, let's put it on the lift. Let's use the winch to pull it, and we'll just beat it back into place. Meanwhile, there's chassis and body shop guys probably crying on the inside if they saw that.
Oh, yeah. Yep, that's that. Yeah, it's amazing. But there's many more stories just like that. But that's the dedication that you need to win that championship. There's so many people that can tell you, that they finished second in this point series and they lost by a round or less than a round, or or a couple rounds. And it's you have to have that mentality. Like you can't just give up and go home. I mean, and if you do, the chances of you winning that championship are diminished significantly. So, and once you understand that as a racer, you like, there's people that have a lot of money that do this for a hobby that just think that they can just jump in a car and go win a championship. They don't understand that it doesn't matter how much money you have, or, it really depends on your commitment. Like if you're 100% committed to it, that gives you the best chance to win. It doesn't have anything to do with money. Because back then, I definitely didn't have the most money out of all those racers, that I used to race against.
It harkens back to when Ray took the red car out for the first time, and it went into a low flight. He tried to earn his pilot's license and up off 4, came back down, car's beat up. I'm walking back thinking we're done for the weekend. And the next thing I know, we've got the car up on jack stands. We're beating on stuff. We're looking it over. Oh, it's not that bad. We're grabbing some parts from Tommy and the guys over at Carlisle Racing to kind of get stuff fixed. And someone looked at Ray and said, "You're going to try to run again?" And he said, "I didn't show up here to watch. I showed up here to race." And that right there, that was a light bulb moment where I'm like, that's what this is all about right there. This is not local bracket racing anymore. This is a whole new level.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, and that's the mentality that it takes to be successful doing this. If you don't have that, you're just out having fun, and you may win a couple rounds, or you may, maybe even win a couple races, but you certainly aren't championship capable, without that mentality.
Well, Jason, my final question is the one I really like to have fun with the guests. And a lot of people they don't know this. They don't believe me that I have a magical, mythical bank account on the show where I can grant my guests an unlimited budget. And for your particular question of budget, if you could build the perfect race car, what would you build? What car, what class would you run? What that build in your mind you think about when you're daydreaming, what are you going to build?
To be honest, it wouldn't be far off of what we have in that coast packing machine. I mean, that's kind of the clear slate build. I mean, in fact, that car, that chassis is Patrick's, or was originally Patrick's chassis. So that was going to be, kind of our company car per se, that we knew with business and, customers, and we just couldn't give it the time that it needed, to actually be successful running it, ourselves. So we obviously sold it to Eric, and Eric took the car and, kind of finished our dream, so to speak, so that I think it wouldn't be far off of that, but it would be kind of a transformer, so to speak, which would be a little different than this car. This car has some limitations because we didn't have any idea that we wanted to race radial races with it. So it's limited a little bit in that platform from a chassis perspective. It can't do some of the things that it needs to do to be what I consider like an elite, style chassis right at the moment. So it would be this car with some slight modifications to the chassis to allow it to be, the best quote unquote radial chassis and the best quote unquote big tire chassis. Because I really do enjoy both of those in venues the most. I love the challenge of the big tire, trying to figure out how to run as fast as you can on a radial on a big tire is a huge challenge. And I mean, we went a 59 this year on the big tire, and we've been a 50 flat on the radial. So we're getting closer. But that, to me, it didn't matter if I had $200 million or $20. That's the car that I would want to build. And that's the class, or the classes that I would want to run, because they're the most appealing to me. And there's so many organizations to race, like big tire wise. There's PDRA, NMCA, Northwest, Northeast Pro Mod, Midwest Pro Mod, there's I mean, several different venues throughout the country to race that in, ADRL now as well. I mean, it just like you could race every weekend, seems like, and if I had all that money, I'd probably race every damn weekend.
Just put it all in the racing, right? Like I got the car,
Yep,
put
that's
it,
right.
just put it in set cards.
Yep.
Well, Jason, our time here is coming to an end, and I like to give my guests their opportunity to pull off the old John Force and thank every sponsor and everybody they need to thank and tell people where to find them at. So I'm going to turn the floor over to you, my friend, so you can tell people who you need to thank and where they can learn about what you got going on.
Yeah. Obviously need to start with Coast Packing. I mean, they're the whole vehicle behind, that the white car that I'm able and fortunate to drive this year. That's obviously that's a huge deal. I mean, you need to look them up, coastpacking.com. That's why they do this. They want to take advantage of the marketing opportunities through, platforms like this and different coverages on live feed and all the fans. They want to, basically, educate the public on, animal fat, shortening and just, basically drive their business to the next level. I mean, I believe they're the number one, animal fat shortening company on the West Coast, but I think they, prefer to get that number one in the country, and it's such a great company, great family-owned business. So I obviously want to start there. PTP Racing, got to mention our own company. We're a huge part of that, particular team, and this is probably why, the reason I'm mentioning this particular team more is because that's the vehicle that's given me the opportunity to actually have this interview. Lions Custom Motorsports, they maintain the car. Noonan Race Engines, Jimmy Rector maintains the engines. Noonan, provides the platform and, the structure behind all of our recipes, Procharger, Haltech, Liberty Gears, Quick Drive, Precision Racing and Suspension, Hoosier, Summit Racing, NGK. Just those are the companies that are really backing this car. It's hard to remember everybody when it's really not my car, but again, I treat it like it is. So try to mention all the sponsors, that support R&E Racing and, Cam Hensley and Trucker John and Ben Liedel and Ox, are huge contributors to this team that without those guys, we wouldn't be able to, do, anything that we've achieved this year. I hope we're just getting started. We've won, I think, 3 out of 6 or 3 out of 7 races this year. Been to the finals and another one. So, I mean, ideally, it'd be nice to, finish off the year, keeping that streak alive and seeing if it can take us to a PDRA championship.
Well, Jason, I greatly appreciate you coming on the show. It was a lot of fun. I've got to hit my sponsors, of course, brought to you by MSD, Procharger, Performance Distributors, Airflow Research, Flowmaster, Holly, Mosier Engineering, Comp Cams, Fuel Air Spark Technology, and Elderbrock all make the Dragzine Podcast possible these days. Awesome to talk to you, and hopefully I'll see you soon here at the track, Jason.
Thank you much.